April 9, 2019, meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for the Town of Fairfield. We have a light agenda tonight. First order of business are the meeting minutes from March 26, 2019. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. McAleese and Noonan. Okay. Any questions or comments? I didn't see any corrections.
I didn't see anything either.
Good. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Nope.
I wasn't present at that last meeting. I read the minutes, but can I make a motion to approve if I wasn't at the meeting?
Well,
I read them and
if you watched, there was no tape because we were in the.
Yeah.
We did have an audio tape. You didn't listen to the audio tape,
not, no,
which is fine.
Forgot, yeah.
So then you can just abstain.
Yeah.
All right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Right. So Commissioner McAleese abstains. And say again.
I made the motion. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Wow. What a procedural nightmare.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
All right, so Commissioner McAleese, you withdraw your motion.
I withdraw my motion.
All right. Commissioner Noonan moves to approve the minutes. Commissioner Levy seconds that. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay. One abstention and the motion carries unanimously.
Right.
Yes. There are booby traps everywhere. The next item is the public hearing, and we have one on our agenda. 1101 Harbor Road, coastal site plan application of 1100 Harbor Road, LLC, pertaining to waterfront improvements with proposal of land donation to the town for enhanced public access in the R3 zone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is John Mallon. I'm an attorney here in Fairfield. I'm representing the property owner, Mr. Brian McMahon, who is seated in the back. Also with me is Chris Eggers, who will be presenting to us in a moment. Race engineering. It's always a little pressure to be the only public hearing item on what's referred to as a light agenda, so I will try to do my part. This is a coastal site plan review, as the call indicates, for proposed waterfront access improvements at 1101 Harbor Road. What this project is really about, and I know you've, in your diligence, taken the time to read all the material that's been submitted, is to really accomplish two things. And you know, you hear oftentimes in your capacity a win-win situation. Well, this happens to be one where I think that's the fairly correct overview of what we're trying to do here. The project is designed to improve public access to the beach and shorefront for all of our residents through a gift by Mr. McMahon of private land to the public. That's going to allow, as I think in Chris's presentation you'll see clearly, residents to enjoy the benefits of Southport Harbor consistent with the lower wharf park use in a manner which is safe and convenient in terms of access. And as Chris points out in his material, the proposal is consistent with the goals of the management plan for Southport Harbor. What we're really trying to accomplish here, and the motivation for this, is there is an easement in place, as you are aware, that allows public access. But the easement, basically over revetment areas and whatnot, as we'll detail, is simply not safe and doesn't provide the kind of safe protection and access that the public is entitled to. This has a reverse problem, or has had, for Mr. McMahon, because what happens then is people, in order to access the beach, will trespass over his property, creating liability issues to the point where he was unable to get insurance for almost a year. Liability insurance, because of the concerns that the insurance company had about public trespass over the property. So, as going to be explained by Chris Eggers, currently the easement exists at 1100 Harbor Road over an 8-foot wide area that, as I said, is designed to provide public access
beyond the limits of the private property. But as you can see, maybe from your own inspections, and certainly from the photographs that we've submitted, the easement is not well suited for access, as it's mostly located in an area of an existing stone revetment, which is not easily or safely traversable by the public. To access the beach, as I said before, people have therefore been trespassing over the McMahon's property, causing very serious concerns, as I rendered before, with regard to liability and so on and so forth. From the day Mr. McMahon bought this property, and that we had conversations with him, he did not want to, nor does he want to, wish to restrict access to the shoreline or curtail enjoyment of those interested in using the beach. But the ongoing problems associated with the potential liabilities and difficulty in maintaining homeowners insurance, as I referred to, led us to look for a manner in which we could create the win-win situation. Actually improve public access by the gift of land by Mr. McMahon, and at the same time relieve the trespass problem. Mr. Chairman.
So, I appreciate everything you've said, and I understand the situation. If I look at the plans correctly, it appears that the water lot is proposed to be further subdivided, or a lot line revision. Forgive me, we had a dust up on that one. A lot line revision such that there will be a remaining portion of land owned by the applicant that is on the beach, right?
Correct. And Chris is going to, not to interrupt you, but in a matter of a minute, Chris is going to walk us through all of that.
Okay.
In detail. And so maybe, I'm not to preempt your question, but let's let him do that.
I just wanted to make sure that that's part of the whole thing. I don't understand if trespass is such an issue, there's this thing that's there that needs to just answer that.
I think you'll see in the presentation that the improvement to public access by the gift associated with this proposal is going to alleviate the concerns that we would have about trespass.
Yeah.
But that'll be provided. So what we have here is that situation where we can provide by a gift of the waterfront property that we propose to do to the town so the public access is improved and is safer for all of us. Our only alternative to that, which Mr. McMahon dismissed out of hand, and you know, this is not meant to be a tribute benefit for him, but he could have easily said, well, look, it's private property, I'm going to put up my fence, I'm just going to protect my property. But being a good neighbor, he didn't want to do that, and to effect this, as I think you might get some sense from the material and us being here tonight, he spent a considerable amount of money, beyond the gift of land that we are proposing that we hope you'll approve, but a great deal of money has been spent, and will be spent when you hear about the improvements that we will be making, so I hope you'll take that into consideration as well. As Chris is going to describe in a minute, the majority of the waterfront property will be deeded to the town with an 8-foot wide portion, which I believe you refer to, remaining as private property on the south end of the site. However, as you'll see in Chris's presentation, it should be noted that this remaining waterfront private property is located in an area of ledge and tidal grass, and therefore it's less accessible to the public, and that's the benefit, okay? Now, lastly, got everybody anticipating you, Chris. This has been referred and reviewed by a number of entities. You have a letter or an email to Mr. Wendt from Mr. Goucher of the DEEP. We actually met on site, Mr. Wendt, our team, Mr. McMahon, and Mr. Goucher. The DEEP has approved this proposal. You also have a positive CAM report recommendation prepared by Ms. Harrigan, which is part of your file. You have an approval of the Harbor Management Commission. Chairman Harmon is here tonight. He'll speak for himself, but he did send you a letter on April 8th. I can tell you that we've had the support and the approval and a great deal of guidance from both the Conservation Director and your Planning and Zoning Director. We've been working closely with the town attorney since the inception of this concept, Mr. Lesser, and we're prepared to finalize the new easement, subject to your consideration and approval of this CAM application. And the application also includes a letter of support from the first selectman, Mr. Tetro. It was sent to the DEEP, and it's dated April 3rd, 2018. It's in your application package. Mr. Tetro has also been very instrumental in getting us working with the town departments to effectuate this, because as I said at the outset, I think it's the perception of everyone that this has a great benefit to the town, as well as addressing the concerns and considerations that originally gave rise to this from the McMahon's perspective. So at this time, I'd like to have Chris Eggers come forward. He'll give you a brief overview, and then we'll be pleased to answer any questions that you might have. Chris.
Hi, my name's Chris Eggers, like John introduced me, and work for Race Coastal Engineering, and go through the proposed project, the site layout, the mechanics of the issue, and the how the gift works, what parts retained, and all that. And then I have some reduced copies of some of these boards here, so you guys can look along on those. Okay.
If you want to pull the microphone out of the thing and walk around.
Okay, so this is the project site.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Yes.
Maybe turn that a little bit more this way so we can... Oh, okay, never mind, thank you. That's all right, I didn't realize they were coming down.
Well,
That's plenty. That's perfect right
Thank
there.
you.
Right, because-
yeah, thank you. Sure. So these pictures represent some of what was in the application, plus some of the other boards are supplemental to what was originally in the application, or graphical versions of the drawings, to make it a little easier to visualize. So this is 1100 Harbor Road. Here's the dwelling. Over here's the water lot on this corner here. So this property is owned by 1100 Harbor Road LLC, the Brian and Karen McMahon. And it's immediately adjacent to the Lower Wharf Park. Going through the photos here, we have the Lower Wharf Park. Lower Park, this would be the easement through here. This is the seawall on the Lower Wharf. You can see the stone here, you can see sand beach, you can see tidal grass here, tide's coming in. Here's the similar view, but the tide's a little more out, you can see a little more of the beach. Over here is the rock is essentially under some of this sand that gets carried up and on to the areas up here. And basically it's a lot of storm revetment in the small beach and tidal wetlands. Okay. So here's the property lines for the water lot. This area in here is private property. This 8-foot wide strip colored in orange here next to the Lower Wharf is part of, is the easement. So it's an 8-foot wide easement. This is the public right-of-way to access the waterfront. And that access is essentially limited to walk-in, sightseeing, recreational fishing. And that's in the deed restrictions for the easement. And it goes down here. So the property lines are to the common trust of mean high water. So everything in the Mill River and the harbor up to the mean high water line is common trust, public property, and then the easement allows people to come down through here. Plus, the park is, of course, open to the public.
So, can I?
Yes.
Thanks. So, on that picture there on the left, can you point out that lot line revision that I mentioned and the remaining piece that?
Yeah. Actually, I have that drawn up on the next one.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I wanted to conceptualize it here. Is it?
It would essentially be opposite the easement. It'd be on this this end of the property on the south end here, and it would run. It'd be another 8-foot wide strip of land. That would come down in here.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. And the big public draw would be, we have the beach here, so you can come down, it's nice and sandy, great views, nice place to walk. The problem, which John had mentioned, was the easement is about 8 feet wide, so to stay within the easement, you'd have to be on top of these existing stones, which you can clearly see if you're out there looking at the pictures. It's not safe to walk on, it's not conducive to walk on. So what happens is essentially is people, they find their way down over the sandier parts, off the easement onto the private property, which is a nuisance for the McMahons, and that people are trespassing on their land. This references the summary of some of the historic aerials of the site, which were in the letter that was provided as well. Those originally just to the Harbor Management Commission, in response to some of their comments and questions. So anyway, you can see, going through the lower wharfs here from the earliest photo in 1934. In 1974, we can clearly see the stone revetment is here. There's the lower wharf. Here's the stone revetment. The red is, it's an infrared image here. The red is the tidal grass and the lawn up here. And we can see the stone remains consistently throughout there. Sand kind of comes and goes, covers up parts of it there. You can see over here, it's covering up the corner of the stone here, but essentially the stone remains in place unchanged, which predates the creation of the easement, actually. Okay, so this would be the proposed work right here. So the proposal is, instead of having people walk on the easement, still allow everyone to get to the beach, actually greatly improve how much public land is available for the beach by giving this part to the town, putting a wall up here, and subdividing or deeding, splitting the parcel, modifying the property line so that this part on the shorefront goes to the town, full public access for recreational use, fishing, sightseeing, those kind of passive recreation things. And this part remains with 1100 Harbor Road LLC as private property. And then this is the part you were asking about, 8-foot wide piece of the parcel remains with the private landowners accessing the waterfront for their riparian rights and maintaining it as a waterfront property for them as well.
For their what rights?
Riparian?
I thought you said.
Yeah. So, is that the only part of the private property then which would remain on the waterfront for riparian rights?
Yes, this 8-foot wide is the only part of this that would actually come back down to mean high water.
Is it the intention to exclude the public from that 8-foot strip of property?
Yes, that'd be private property, so it would be not open to the public.
So I didn't see any plan for any like fencing or anything like that. I mean, how, given what's happening now, how is the public going to know that they can be on this portion over here, but right over there, that's off limits when they don't understand the boundary lines today?
Yeah, yes, first of all, they'd have a wider area, so it's not going to be necessarily as confined.
Sure.
So there's less motivation, for lack of a better word, to trespass. The other part of the thinking is we have the ledge outcrop here, we have the stone revetment here that will remain, and we have the tidal grass, so it's a lot harder to walk through here. But
does that? I'm familiar with the area and all of the landscape, not technically landscape, but the features here. Is it possible for us to go down and walk the area? yeah, and visit.
We're comfortable, Mr. McMahon is comfortable that with the layout.
Can you use the microphone?
With the layout as proposed and with the natural features that Chris just referred to in terms of the seagrass, the revetment and whatnot, the trespass will not be the problem that exists now, where the easement itself is unsuitable for, transversing. So
I totally get that.
And we'd like to, his whole point in this exercise, in the spirit of the whole spirit of Southport and his attitude as a neighbor, is he'd like to avoid fencing and signs and things of that nature.
I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate that very much, which is, I think you can get the sense of my question. I want to understand how his objectives can be achieved, and at the same time, the public understands what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to be. If that is simply another point of egress and ingress over seagrass and rocks that provides more waterfront area next to the water lot, which also has that same kind of area, kids go exploring. They go look under the rocks for crabs. They go wading in the water. They pull their boat over the rocks. I mean, just that's what's going to happen here. So I'm trying to understand if, and I'm not disputing the legitimacy of the concern over the trespass issues and the nuisance issues, but just having this extra 8-foot shot of land that sits in between the water and the water lot, like, there's got to be some sense. People go out there and they trip and fall and they're on private property, and if there's no other way for them to know they shouldn't be there, how are we gonna know? That's really where I'm coming from.
Yeah, what we could, we're not as concerned with that. We appreciate your concern on our behalf. I suppose we could deal with signage. The problem with signage is, whatever. Our strong belief is that with the improvements that we are proposing in the, to achieve, the kind of access that's meaningful, that will not be a significant problem, and that's a problem. We've looked at this with our insurance carrier and whatnot. We're not uncomfortable with that layout as it's presently proposed.
Will there be any sort of signage at the, what are we calling this? What's this park? The lower wharf? The lower wharf.
The lower wharf and the water lot.
Yeah.
The lower wharf, we already own.
Yeah, so at the lower wharf to the steps, the new steps to be built going down, is there any kind of signage, or perhaps it could be, even like on a very abstract level, saying you're about to enter a gray zone, above this point is private property, this is accessible to the public, or just one thing before you even enter that area might be helpful.
Yeah, like a small plaque would be open to the idea.
Right,
right at those
beach access,
steps.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
With an arrow, right, Because along that 8-foot, along the other entryway will be a fence.
Yeah.
That's what's proposed. There is
Right.
supposed to be a fence that's going to be installed along what was the easement, which is now going to be town property, right?
Correct, yeah. So the fence would be along this property line here. There'd be the small wall, which is nominally about a foot or two higher than the existing stone where it lines up here.
Yeah.
We have
And
no
then-
objection to a discrete informational sign.
We'd have no objection to a discrete informational sign of the kind that, Mr. McAleese suggested.
Yeah.
So everybody,
It's going to be town, if this goes forward, it's going to be town property. We can put whatever signs we want. Okay. What about the fence now? There was some discussion in the prior, in the materials about, at the Harbor Commission, concern over what kind of fence and how high and all that stuff.
So this is the existing fence here that's on the property now. This fence was approved by the Historical Commission, and its design is per the Historical Commission to get their approval. So, we were looking to put in a wood fence, 3.5 feet high. There would be, we're open to changing the style, but a similar.
Where on the, can you show me on the plan, like on here where that fence is?
Yeah.
On the existing conditions?
So right now, on the existing one,
Yeah, that's a better one. It's gonna be,
I'm curious if
Yeah.
it separates the property, or if it's down here.
you're gonna look here, and it's gonna be,
so right now it's essentially from the street to about here. It's under this black line, the property line. Doesn't show up too well in the aerial in this view, but it's about where it is. From there to there.
right?
Because I've got a lot going on. I think all good though. I think this looks like a clever and generous way of doing, I don't want to say swap, but cleaning up the land so it works for everybody. But it's a funny situation too, because I go down there, my son sails with Sea Scouts out of Pequot, and so I'm down there pretty often. And when I went down with another one of my sons, he got really nervous when we started walking down there, because he didn't know that those were town lands. So it's not clear. I'm surprised that this is an issue, that's a problem that so many people trespass, because I would have thought, it looks very private, and I don't know.
Well, this one's for that situation too, because one of the benefits here is meaningful public access that's identified.
That's why I want you to use the microphone. Meaningful public access.
Normally, I don't have a problem using the microphone.
Trust me, when you're at home trying to listen to the tapes,
Yeah.
it is a
Yeah, it's
nightmare.
tough.
And even watching it on TV, when you're standing there and the camera's on you, you kind of have to read your lips a little bit.
Me?
You.
Really? Because I'm so
Yes.
loud.
Yes.
Well, we'll have to critique
No,
this
I'm
later.
telling you what, you gotta use the microphone.
Yeah. But, so anyway, I mean, as far as the fence, it was approved, as Chris says, was approved by Historic District. We kind of think this approach that we're taking to the fencing is even more discreet and in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, there was some question in the materials about obstructing public views and so forth. I mean, the existing fence is not, right? But it doesn't appear, and I thought I saw something in here about changing that to the wood, which I didn't see like a rendering of that.
Is that this?
Well, that's the, yeah.
Suffice it to
didn't
say,
see
we
that
think
before.
the fence we're proposing is certainly in keeping with and even more discreet than the
Yeah.
fence that was previously and already has been approved by Historic District under a certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
We're mindful of the view considerations, but I think those are not an issue here.
Okay. Good. All right. Anyone else have any other questions on this fence? No?
Where's high tide? Just for a frame of reference.
High water is this line here, elevation 3.2. And this is off of the, a survey from September 2017. So it's right here.
Dotted line?
Blue dotted line, yep.
The work you're proposing doesn't change or doesn't move any rocks or, does it change the grade up on top?
It changes the grade slightly through here, behind this wall, and we have access stairs on the side of the wall here to come down from Lower Wharf onto the beach, which is on the sandier part here, but some of these stones would have to be slightly adjusted.
And that was a primary reason for the site visit by Mr. Goucher and the DEP that Mr. Went accompanied us on. And he was comfortable with this proposal, but that was one of the questions he had as well, but he was comfortable.
Okay, and I just had another question about the strip of land that I'm sure Attorney Fallon wants, but
Go ahead.
in case anybody has any questions for Mr. Eggers.
No. Mr. Levy?
No, I think I'm good.
Attorney Fallon, in the harbor management letter, there's some reference, some concern about ADA compliance.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not ADA is applicable, whether you can make this stairway compliant or a ramp. Is it applicable, and if so, how's it going to be addressed?
Our feeling on that, respectfully, and we appreciate the work that Harbor Management has done on this and the time they've spent on it, but basically, we think that the stairs are the preferable solution here for a couple of reasons. One, we couldn't make, even if it were applicable, an ADA compliant ramp without significant increases in the disturbance because of the requirements of the ramp. Mr. McAleese would know better than I with your background, but so number one, it wouldn't be possible functionally. Number two, it wouldn't be attractive aesthetically. And number three, in that specific area where you're dealing with coastal conditions and moisture and wetness and so on and so forth, a long ramp, we don't think so. Our position on that is we think the stairs are the proper way to go. You certainly can have a discussion in your work session with staff in that regard, get their input if you want from other town agencies, but we, with respect to the Harbor Management Commission, think the stairs are a better route for access than a ramp.
I appreciate that answer. Mr. Levy, have anything more?
Nothing further.
However, the ADA takes no prisoners. If it needs to be ADA compliant and we receive the land, then we will be obligated, the town will be obligated to make it ADA compliant, which might not be what everyone desires.
Yeah,
including the applicant.
as you say, you'll own the land, but in our conversations with the building department, I don't know if Mr. Wentz had any conversations, but I don't think it is applicable. The question is it desirable? I don't think it's desirable, but I don't think you'll find it is applicable.
At the moment, I don't think that there's a question about whether it's desirable or not. The question is whether it is subject to the ADA and needs to be compliant. Did Attorney Lesser give you any opinion on that?
No, Attorney Lesser did not.
Okay. So that's something that
But your point is accurate. Obviously, if it were required, then it would have to be made compliant. But I don't think that is the case here.
Right. I mean, and my point is that if those events were to unfold and the town was forced to make it ADA compliant, then the applicant might not appreciate an ADA compliant ramp, which is now adjacent to his property and on his water rights, on his beach.
We prefer not to have that situation, but even in that scenario, it would not change our commitment to making this gift and to effectuating this change.
Okay.
Attorney Fowler?
Yes.
Why are you keeping the strip? You mentioned the riparian rights, but can you just go through that one more time with me?
Yeah, I mean, I think self-evidently, Chris, you may want to address this too, but we want to maintain, some riparian rights to the property, some waterfront access to the property, and that's important to the value of the property, and that's why we're doing it. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's exactly it. It's a waterfront property. They'd like to keep it a waterfront property, even if it's, greatly reduced.
Only 8 feet.
Yeah, I mean, he's going from
But just,
over 50 feet to 8 feet on waterfront, so.
even if you made that whole thing public land, it would still be accessible from the applicant's house, correct?
But as a matter of title, we would not have a waterfront.
Okay, but that's fair.
Right. That's what it is.
Okay.
As a practical matter, you're right, doesn't probably make much difference, but as a title matter, an evaluation matter, another benefit to the town. It'll keep our property taxes higher.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
Than if we didn't.
that makes more sense. I understand that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm just pulling up one of these letters. Go ahead.
Can you tell me, is this working?
Kind of. Yeah, there you go.
Can you tell me where the trespassing is occurring today or up until now?
Yeah. So essentially, right through here, so this is all public here. You can kind of see the footpath worn into the aerial image here. So people come down right through here. There's a little more sand over the rock right here. People come right down onto here, then they're on this beach here.
Which is, today is private property?
Yes.
Okay. Is Harbor Road dead end there at the edge of the private property?
Yeah, here's the road, and then,
So
there's like a stone wall, and, you can't go
there's no
past
access?
here.
There's no vehicle access past that point?
Yeah, it's dead end.
Okay.
At that cul-de-sac.
There's one more house after them.
Yeah, one more, and then the one after that.
Another question that the HMC raised was management of the property, and I don't know if you had any thoughts on that in response to their request.
Well, I think if you look at the minutes of the Harbor Management Commission, which are also part, okay, I think that becomes a question for the town. I mean, Mr. Carey briefly addressed that, I think, at the meeting. Mr. Wendt, in your work session, may have some comments on that, but, that's not, we have no say over that. And that's a matter of the town's discretion.
Right, once the land would be deeded to the town, then it would become part of the town's waterfront and marinas and such,
Right.
and so then the town would then need to identify the agency responsible for managing that.
Conservation, Parks and Recreation, blah, 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 and that's
Right.
not, whatever, that's a town decision.
Okay.
And Mr. Lesser may have some thoughts for you on that, but I have not talked to him about that.
Very good. Any other questions? Seems like you're coming to the end of your...
I am standing at the microphone and coming to the end. Seriously, I appreciate your attention. A lot of people have worked very hard on this. As I said at the outset, we've had a great deal of input from your staff, conservation staff, harbor management, the First Selectman's office, the town attorney's office. I think it's a great opportunity to do something good for the town, but will also benefit the ultimate interests of Mr. McMahon, who's, I think, gone over and beyond in terms of trying to come up with something that, although at some significant cost to him, preserves public access to the beach in a manner that's not intrusive on his private property rights and actually improves beach access.
So, thank you. You actually just reminded me of questions. So, the improvements that are part of the application, the stairs and so forth, all of that would be done prior to the deeding of the property, right? So that you're doing that work on the applicant's property, and then
Right.
once it's improved,
Right.
then it becomes deeded to the town, and the town then thereafter is responsible for maintaining the property, including
Correct.
those improvements.
Right.
And that would be without any further remuneration to the applicant.
Right, exactly. And that's correct. And as Mr. Carey pointed out, I think those costs are very manageable. The other thing that we haven't mentioned that I know that came up at Harbor Management and should be made clear for this record, and it's, since the genesis of my conversations with Mr. Lesser, the easement that's currently in place has certain restrictions, and you all have the easement.
Yep.
It's part of everything that's submitted, involving, what could be built there and what can't be built there, which is just about everything. I think there's some reference to a gazebo that could be built there. Those restrictions, and that's in your harbor management recommendation too, would be, as part of this approval, carried over to the new easement as well, because there will not be any opportunity for any change in the easement provisions, even though they'll affect the other property.
Well, the change in the easement provision will be that it will go away. I mean, it's going to be a deed, but there will be deed restrictions.
Correct.
That
you
include,
stated,
include the,
Correct.
an applicant doesn't want to transfer the property and then find there's a boathouse being put up in front of his house.
So on those easement restrictions, it may well be that you and the town attorney may decide that they're actually more restrictive than you want, and there's no real impetus to maintain them. I mean, one of them, I think, is you can't use the property boisterously.
Right.
Who needs it?
Right. I think that's correct. Yes.
So, all right, we'll have to get some information from town attorney and work through that language, I guess. I don't recall, was there a proposed deed?
There isn't one at this point, but we could,
Yeah.
Mr. Lesser and I could certainly,
I think that would be helpful and appropriate.
we'll submit that through your staff.
Okay. And Mr. Went, do we need to make a... Mr. Went, sorry to interrupt. Do we need to make a formal request for the information and feedback from Mr. Lesser as to the ADA question? Okay, but do I need to say, that to be included in the hearing, or can we do that after I close the public hearing? We can. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay.
I have one minor question.
Yep. Commissioner Mack, please.
I was just digging through, I don't see, do we have any drawings of the steps? What they're made of, what they look like, or it looks like there's some kind of railing, but what does the railing look like?
Yeah, they'd be concrete steps.
Oh, are they in the thing you just gave us, maybe? I didn't look through there. What is that?
Yeah, I think you ought to cover that. They'd be concrete steps, and they'd have a handrail,
Yeah.
probably similar style to this.
All right. So, I mean, you raise a good point. I mean, should we be requiring plans for the work that is being proposed to be for the improvements, specifically as part of the approval? I mean, I know.
I saw details for the wall and all that stuff
Yeah.
in the construction, but I didn't see anything specifically for the steps, if you're going to
Or
be ours.
I mean, the railing, we got that, the photo, but, I mean, there's no detail.
I would hope you'd find the plans to be comprehensive.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna argue if you want, the steps are, I think, referenced and fairly called out in the plan. There is.
The big one? What
Detail is?
What page is that?
It's 5 of 7.
5 or 7.
But in plan, you mean? Yeah, I see they're showing a plan, but I don't see a detail, like what the railing looks like.
Right, that's
What
what
they're made, are they concrete, are they stone? It looks like the retaining wall is mostly concrete with a stone facing, it's got a railing on top.
And I would say, in usual circumstances, we probably wouldn't get into this level of detail and say, we want to know what the railing is going to be made of and, sort of what it's going to look like and so forth. But you're doing these improvements in preparation to, deeding the property and the improvements to the town. So I think we have a legitimate interest in understanding, sort of exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and the proposed section here is section 7 on drawing 7. So this is the lower roof here. We have the landing of the stair shown here.
What page
And we
is
have the
that?
railing, 7.
7?
Yeah.
7 of 7?
But it's not necessarily it's an engineering drawing, not necessarily an architectural
And
detail of
what's
the
the
stair,
reference?
railing. Section 7.
Railing,
Right. So you show a railing up there, but
concrete steps.
Oh, concrete steps.
so you'd like more
Oh, I see,
detail
so
on
it's like,
that.
this is like cut through the top landing, looking back toward the client's property.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't see the railing coming down.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we would hope that would be satisfactory. If you want a greater detail, we can obviously submit that to the staff too, and you'd have it for your work session. I hope we'd close the hearing. But-
Well, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's cosmetic.
It's up to you.
It's important, but it's something that I think you can submit
The staff,
to staff so that we can have that but for our executive session.
just let us know.
All right? I'm letting you know.
No equivocation.
I'm letting you know.
All right, Chris, we can do that, and that would be submitted to...
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Great.
No, that's very good. Anyone else?
For me, no.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. So, is there any members of the public that wish to be heard on this? Yeah. Step right up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just
handed a letter to Mr. Went that I'll read into the record. I'm Jack Imes, president of the Sasquatch Association in Southport. Dear Commissioners, the Sasquatch Association is writing to oppose the approval of the proposal. We believe the benefits to our community, as envisioned in the creation of the present easement, will prove to be a detriment to the ongoing access to the waterfront. In particular, we are concerned that the lack of commitment to maintain the stairway to the beach, putting that on the town, creates an uncertain future for the maintenance of that and for the ability to access the shore safely, considering the effects of storms over time. In addition, the size and location of the donated land is insignificant and of little or no benefit to the public. And in exchange, the easement will run on property to which the community already is allowed access. Finally, the long-term benefits of, and this is really a side issue, of fortifying the rock wall embankment as planned is associated in other locations such as the New Jersey shoreline and elsewhere with greater erosion than if no fortification was provided. While the science on this matter is not settled, the uncertainty is potential for more harm than good, which is real. Thank you for your considerations of our concerns.
Thanks. And, you know, ordinarily we don't ask members of the public questions, but you're representing Sasquatch, and you've been looking at this for a while, and this is the first that we're learning. We didn't see this letter previously to tonight. You said a few things there very quickly that need a little unpacking.
You bet.
So maybe you could first talk about the maintenance of the stairs and then speak to the fortifying of the stone wall and the revetment that you think are deleterious as opposed to beneficial.
Yeah, so on the first matter, the original plans that we had looked at was a stone steps, and now it's concrete. So I think that mitigates the concern to some degree. We understand that that is the burden of the town to maintain, and I think that's a set of stone steps could be much more susceptible to degradation than concrete. So I think that's the reason for it expressed as written.
All right. And what about the revetment and the science not being settled?
So not the, I'm not sure if, I don't know what revetment is. It's the fortification of the shore, the rock shore. It appeared in the plans that we saw that there was concrete reinforcement or fortification of that shoreline. Is that,
There are improvements to the revetment, which is that rocky sort of shoal area right there that they're undertaking to do.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
I think you're both talking about the similar things.
Yeah.
There is in fact a concrete retaining wall behind that will be built to retain additional land for the property owner. Revetment, my understanding is revetment that's there now will be replaced and patched in front of that wall. So
At least that's what's on the plans.
so,
you see right there in that drawing right
Yeah.
there. You can see the concrete wall.
Up top.
The one you just had, the lower one you had your finger on.
And down there.
Yeah.
On the right, on our right. Don't go down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Keep going on the floor.
Oh, this
Yeah.
joint, yeah.
Lower right-hand corner. That one there.
So this is existing, and the plan is to add additional fortification to this,
Yes.
and not anywhere here.
No, definitely there.
Okay.
90 degrees to that, and parallel to the property owner's front property line, basically.
Yeah.
the lack of or the lack of earlier notification about our concerns is due to the fact that we didn't get the materials until recently. So,
Sure, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Listen, Sasquatch takes their role very seriously.
Yes.
You're here often. You guys spend a lot of time looking at these things closely. And when you tell me something about science being unsettled,
this has to do with fortification of previously unfortified rock as a barrier or no barrier.
okay.
And, there's experience up and down the coast about this. But it sounds like that's not as germane as what we thought.
Okay.
I had a question, but I can't remember what it was from the earlier testimony. Greg?
May I,
Mike, did you guys have any questions?
Mr. Chair? May I?
Sure. Commissioner Noonan.
You had mentioned that the gift of property would give land that the public was already entitled to?
No, I'm sorry. So, and the letter is in the record, so two comments there. One is that the gift of the land is really insignificant. I mean, it's on a beach that you're going to walk over anyway to get to the water. The other point was that the easement is is going to now be on property to which the public already has access over the lower wharf. So,
Well, I mean, that's kind of my point is, I mean, that pink area right there, down there is what is being told, to me at least, what the private property is, the orange being the easement.
yes.
And the issue that they're explaining to us is, instead of going all the way down to the end of that orange to the rock, the public, in all honesty, maybe rightfully so, sees going through the pink as the safer course of action, but thus trespassing on their property. What they're doing is giving a good portion of that pink, so not only can they traverse it, they can use it.
Today.
No, like when they give it, I mean,
Public.
right now, if you're looking at that land below the rock wall towards the easement, there's beach. As I understand it, if that is accurate, that is inaccessible to the public to either traverse or either to camp out. He's saying, I want to give that to you, so not only can you traverse the area more safely, you can actually stay on there.
So our understanding of the gifted properties in the beach area, in the drawings, is down in the sand. There's a
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
and
I think we've asked enough questions, because ultimately what you said before was that people are going to walk down and go down to the beach anyway, and the point is, it's their property.
right. No, what I meant was that the access, as I understand it,
Will be now
Ye-
on this property right here, the lower wharf.
No,
That's that stairway that's
No.
there.
No,
no.
No, the stairway is about midway up that wall.
it's in the orange.
It's
Keep going up a
keep
little
going,
further.
keep
Right there.
going,
Down
right
right
there.
That's where the stairway.
Right here, this would be present easement.
Yeah.
And we'll
That's
continue.
that part's gonna disappear.
No, that's going to
No,
continue.
no, that's going to be gifted, that's going to be deeded to the town.
Oh, this
No,
easement.
this
Yes.
part goes back to them, this upper part.
Yeah, but
Lower
this
part.
Okay,
easement's-
I think we've asked enough
Sorry-
questions.
sorry
I
for the
think we need to go
confusion.
look at the plans.
sorry for the confusion.
This
Peg,
easement
did you want to say
stays.
something?
Okay, does any other members of the, thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
This stays as, this whole thing becomes ambiguous, but the public won't have access to that.
Southport, Connecticut,
I understand correctly.
I'm talking from...
Sorry, mic went off, I think?
You're all set?
No, there's
The power on top, it's right on top, it says,
Yeah, I think it's,
there we
yep,
go.
All right. Paul Fadimine, 235 Village Lane, Southport, Connecticut. One of the problems I have with this proposal, I'm talking about just myself, is that back when the town had a dispute with the former landowner, there was some dispute. I'm not sure the nature of the dispute. It could have been one claiming one thing, one claiming another thing, but there was a dispute. It ran to litigation. There was a settlement of that dispute between the town and the then existing owner. The problem I have is I don't know what changed with respect to make that dispute different now, or not dispute, but to make that settlement different. The land is the same. The only thing that changed is the owner. And now the owner wants to renegotiate the original agreement they had with the town. And I'm not sure that in general is appropriate, and whether you should act very cautiously to do that, because that was the whole purpose for the litigation and the resolution. And the new owner, by the agreement, takes pursuant to notice of the existing agreement. So there's been no real change, other than the owner. But now, there wants to be a change. Part of the problem I have is the agreement is more than just an easement.
it limits the property and the use of that property to a large degree. And there are reasons for that, evidently, in the settlement. There are reasons why they just didn't grant an easement, but a limitation onto the use of that property. One of the limitations is that neither the town nor the grantors shall construct or install any hedge, fence, chain, or other physical demarcation of the easement area from the water lot. There was already a fence put in, as I understand it, that demarcates the easement. And there wasn't supposed to be anything demarcating the easement, other than there was an exception for a sign that could be placed, and what that sign could say, and where it would be placed. So, that's one issue I have. It sort of opens up a precedent that if a new owner wants to renegotiate a deal that they have with the town, because they took a piece of land subject to it, maybe they can do that, and that's a bad precedent. The other problem I have is that the language appears to indicate that they want to keep the land as it is, and they're trying to restrict any further improvements on the land. And part of the problem I have is that the owner is really improving the land and the seawall substantially, and in fact extending the useful benefit of that land along the easement that he wants to relinquish. And that is going to change dramatically, I think, the look and feel of that piece of property from the harbor area, especially the proposed extension of the fence line. If you look at this property, extends out into the water to a large degree and extends your sight lines from the harbor area out to the open mouth of the Mill River into Long Island Sound. And any intrusion on that land or extension of fencing or things on that property are going to severely compromise that view. And I think part of the restrictions on the land that were placed at the time of the negotiation was the purpose for maintaining it as was and to maintain those views and sight lines and to keep the harbor looking as it had looked many, many years ago. So I'm not sure what the real benefit is for the public, other than the belief that they'll have better access, when I don't think they will have better access. The wharf itself does not provide water access. The wharf itself has cement walls, and you can look at the water from the wharf, lower wharf, but you can't access the water. This is the only access to that area in water. So those are some of the problems I have with the proposal. Not to say that some proposal could be struck, or some deal could be struck again, or there's some reasonable basis or some motivating factor to necessitate a deal. I'm not sure there is a motivating factor to necessitate a deal, or to renegotiate what's already been negotiated. But if there is some extenuating circumstance or hardship that you wanted, the belief is, yeah, you really got to reopen this agreement again and try and make some other new agreement, I would propose that if that is done, that the extension of the improvements closer to the water be pushed back, and that if there is any relinquishments of the easement, it's done further closer to Harbor Road and not, in essence, extend where the sort of natural barriers are now, down further towards the water area. And I think they have that finger that points out, not here, but this extension here, is really extending this natural line over here, extending it further down along near the closer to the water. The other aspect is that if I don't think the steps are very good if that is what is eventually done. There's steps involved. Steps are very hard to negotiate. It should, if you're going to have access in that area, I don't think steps are the way to go. A ramp would be certainly preferable if the decision is to go with this proposal and do something. I would think you'd want a ramp that would extend further up the easement and extend down to the high water mark. But I think that it would facilitate access and not compromise and defeat the access. I think this proposal as planned is really in large ways would restrict, in practice, access to the water. In the way it was set up in that, in the step area and having it difficult to access for many people that have limited mobility. A lot of old people use this facility now. They like to go by the water. Any barrier to that access, which steps are a natural barrier, I think is problematic. The other problem I have is that right now, if you get rid of that access or easement at Harbor Road, there is no effective access to the lower wharf because of the stone wall. You have a stone wall that it comes out and stops right at the start of the easement. I think there is. You have, on this area, you can see this stone wall right here, the corner of the stone wall goes right to the easement. And so you have a stone wall here. You do have an opening in the stone wall in the middle of the wharf, lower wharf, but that opening currently is closed by a wire. So if you have a person that can't lift their leg up 2 or 3 feet,
That's where they're proposing to improve the access to the beach by putting in the railing and the stairs to transgress what was an easement, which would now be deeded to the town,
Right.
down that orange strip into the water lot, which would now be deeded to the town so that people can actually use the beach area.
I'm referring to how you even get onto the lower wharf. The lower wharf, on the edge of Harbor Road, is a stone wall. And that stone wall has a break in the middle of the lower wharf. And in the break in the middle is a chain, or not a chain, but a cable. So right now, currently, a person that wants to access lower wharf, just the lower wharf, which they can do, they have to use the easement. As it exists right now, unless they step over the stone wall or step over the wire that the town has put on the opening in the middle of the lower wharf.
Right. And that's town property.
I understand that's not right, but my point is, right now, the existing access to the lower wharf is through the easement on Harbor Road, from the entrance of Harbor Road, or along Harbor Road, the adjacent easement to Harbor Road. They have to walk on the easement and then bear left to go into the lower wharf. Now, so the town's going to have to change that entranceway if they get rid of this easement.
They're not getting rid of the easement. That portion of that area would be deeded to the town.
That's this area up here?
Yes, the entire length of the orange in that photograph, in the upper left-hand corner there, would be deeded to the town.
No, I don't think so.
Correct.
That's correct.
No.
That's
not how I understood it either.
This easement's going away, and you have to access it over here.
Correct. That's how I read it too.
Well, Mr. Fallon can address this on rebuttal, but, Mr. Fadabine, I understand what you're saying. I think we understand what you mean. Yep.
Suppose get rid of this orange part at the top along Harbor Road and have access along the lower wharf, and then you go into the lower wharf and you move over and
So,
go down steps.
Mr. Fallon will address this on his rebuttal. My understanding was that the entirety of the orange strip is part of the deeded land, the proposed deeded land to the town. But we'll get clarification on that.
I hope so, because that's a major issue.
Of course, which is part of the reason why I wanted to see a proposed deed.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay? Which is part of the reason why I asked Mr. Fallon to submit a proposed deed,
left that orange
which
line.
we haven't seen, okay? To be sure that we understood exactly what was proposed to be deeded to the town, meets and bounds, restrictions on use, restrictions on what we can do with it once we get it, etc. So, your points are all very clear, and your comments are appreciated.
Well, thank you very much for listening, and
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
Hi, I'm Mike Drew, I'm a resident of Southport. Thank you for allowing to hear my comment. It's going to take just a moment because I just want to reiterate my concern is that the current easement contains very valid restrictions and limitations. And I would hope that you would take those current restrictions attached to that easement into consideration should you go forward and approve this project. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other members of the public?
thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to apologize because it's very difficult to hear back there, and I couldn't see exactly what everybody was pointing to. So forgive me if I bring something up that may have already been answered. I apologize ahead of time.
No problem.
Thank you very much for asking for legal counsel on the ADA issue, because I do think it's a real issue and would need to be clarified. I understand that the homeowner is concerned about insurance. I'm just curious if he does think he can get insurance by closing this off this way. Or are we going through something that, in fact, might not allow him to get insurance still? I don't know the answer to that question. I am concerned about how this will look for an approach for the Southport Harbor. Southport Harbor has been a unique item on the whole waterfront, and now we're actually changing the entire configuration of the immediate entrance to the harbor. So I do hope that you consider that. It will make a difference. Thank you very much.
Oh, just your name, please.
Peg North.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else? No? All right, going once, going twice. Mr. Harmon? No? Okay. Mr. Wendt, did you have a comment?
Before Mr. Fallon does his rebuttal, I just want to, and I'm sure he will, but the access question is, you can access the lower wharf without having to step
Yes.
over the chain.
Yeah. Yep.
What?
It's on, but you
Gotta get real close.
Very close to it.
Bad mic choice tonight. You can access the lower wharf without having to cross the chain, but the access to the, and again, the only access that the public has is over that orange strip presently. What's proposed is access to the entirety of the beach below the proposed wall. So that the first half, if you will, of the strip of the current easement will revert back to the applicant. And the public will have access from the stair to the beach. The public has no access to the beach presently.
And how
They're accessing it
well,
through private property,
they have access, okay,
below mean high water.
yeah, and they have access over an embankment, over a revetment, rocks, okay? So they do have access. That is the easement, okay? And the whole point of this is to provide an improvement to the area where the easement lies and deed that property to the town, along with the water lot, subject to a proposed lot line revision, so that people who are currently using the beach will be able to use it as a town beach and not private property, okay? The only thing that wasn't clear about everything was that there was going to be some change to the space, to the easement land, to the land that is subject to the easement. And I don't understand why we would be considering reverting back a portion of that land to the applicant if, in this construct.
I'll let Mr. Fallon address this. But the two other points I wanted to make. The significant change that's occurred since the town's acquisition of the easement is the town's subsequent acquisition of the lower wharf piece.
No, that's very clear to me.
Okay.
Not only that, but since the town acquired the easement, the public seeking to access has been traversing private property, and that's caused a nuisance for the landowner. I mean, that's abundantly clear.
And lastly, the process does not end with this commission. There are two aspects to this that this commission is going to review. One is the coastal site plan application for the proposed improvement to the seawall that the applicant is proposing, and the second is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen about your position on the acquisition of the town's property. So
we don't make a decision as to whether the town is going to acquire this property from a resident.
That's why I wanted to make clear. There's going to be a coastal site plan review with respect to the physical improvements, and then a recommendation pursuant to 8-24 of the statutes to the
Selectmen and the RTM as to the acquisition, and that will continue down the path.
And since we're having this dialogue, and for the edification of the public and other members of the commission, the reason that we are considering the substantive desirability and the merits of these improvements and changes is not with respect to the coastal site plan application. It's with respect to our recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to whether we think in our planning and zoning capacity that acquiring this land with these improvements under the terms of a proposed deed that we've yet to see is something we should recommend to do, or not.
Yeah, correct. I just wanted to make that role. You're wearing two different hats here as this, and the process will march forward beyond this commission should.
Right, and we have to consider those two questions separately, right? Whether it complies with, the coastal site plan and the CAM and all that, and then the second question is, do we want to do this, right? I mean, we've heard a lot of comments. Yeah, do we want to recommend that the town do this, on a substantive level, given, the different competing arguments and interests that we've heard about. Settlement agreement for the town is a prior dispute. We've got an easement. Do we want to provide different access? Heard comments about changes to the features and all that kind of stuff. So, very appreciate your clarifications. I think that was helpful. We're still in public comment, and I see a hand in the back of the room. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to be heard? Please come to the podium.
Hi, I'm Jim Harmon. I'm the chairman of the Harbor Management Commission, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of points, particularly in relation to what Mr. Fattabine said. He is correct that the main public access to the lower wharf today is over the little slanted part.
Behind
that one.
Behind the one
on
the board.
I think.
Yeah.
So the main public access to the lower wharf today is through here, okay? Through what is now the easement, and what I think Mr. Fallon is going to clarify is actually going to revert to the homeowner after this change, okay? And the main reason that is the public access is because at the other end of this stone wall, and continuing over to here, there's a chain across the opening. And that's to prevent people from driving onto the lower wharf. And so I think part of what we would want to do, assuming that this goes through, is to modify that chain so that there's a post or something 3 feet or so from one wall or the other, so that people can walk onto the lower wharf without.
You could do like they do in Washington D.C. Put a big pylon, even like a dock pylon.
Yes,
to be
exactly.
consistent with the waterfront.
Exactly.
Every 3 feet, so that a car can't drive, but people can freely come and go.
Or something.
Yeah.
But I think we would have to make some other change to the access to the lower wharf, nothing major.
Is the Harbor Commission responsible for the lower wharf?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And is that something that...
So we would work with DPW to make whatever changes
All right.
necessary there.
All right. Does the clarity for me, anyway, over the reversion of we'll call it the upper part of the easement property to the landowner, can you comment on that? What is the Harbor Commission's position on the scope of the land that's proposed to be deeded to the town?
We didn't take an official position on that.
Okay.
So this area, the area that's outlined in white here, is what would be entirely under control of the property owner. So there is a section of that easement that would go away and revert to the property owner.
Yeah.
one thing that, just speaking as an individual and not speaking for the Harbor Commission, one possible change that might be is to make that finger a little shorter, less advantageous for the property owner, but it might then allow room to build the ramp that people have been talking about.
And
That was not a harbor management
Right.
official recommendation.
Yeah, so I'll ask this question then to you, both in your capacity as the chairman of the Harbor Commission and individually.
Yes. Switch hands.
Exactly. Is the preference, and I'll say the preference so that you can answer it in both capacities, is the preference for stairs or ramp if we are to reshape the access there? Is the preference for stairs or a ramp?
Our main purpose as the Harbor Commission was to bring it to the attention of people who know what the requirements are, that if there is an ADA requirement there such that once the town owns the property, they'd have to change the stairs, we wanted people to take that into consideration.
Sure, but,
So I think the steps are certainly much better than what someone to comply with the letter of the easement would have to do today to get below the high water mark.
Yeah.
Because today, they cross about here.
Yeah.
Roughly there, and they walk all the way down to there, which is the high tide line over Mr. McMahon's property.
Right.
Right?
And they're crossing over rocks.
And today, in order to comply with the easement, they'd have to scramble along the rocks next to the lower wharf. So.
Right, and under the terms of the easement, we can't improve that area. It needs to remain the same, right?
That's right, yes. Other than maintaining the rocks that are there already.
Right, but we couldn't
even, I don't think, under the letter of the easement, I don't think we could even rearrange the rocks to make them step-like.
To make them step-like, in other words, right. So, and that's a benefit. I mean, you perceive that to be a benefit to the town and the context.
Certainly improving the town's access, or making legal the access that the public is currently enjoying across Mr. McMahon's beach would be an improvement, yes.
Right, okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this? Okay.
Without belaboring it, because I think Mr. Harmon did a very good job, I'm going to ask
Thank you.
Mr. Eggers to come up, just to make sure we're all clear on what portion of the property is being deeded to the town, what portion of the property is being retained by Mr. McMahon. I would point out, and I think this was covered, maybe it's not in the minutes, but I know Mr. Carey has mentioned it numerous times at the various meetings of Harbor Management, 2/3 of the property that is presently owned and being considered here by Mr. McMahon is being given to the town. It's a 2-for-1 swap. But just, could you, Chris, using that board that the chair referred to before with the orange and stuff, just make sure we're all clear on that, and then I'll have a few comments with regard to
I think it's behind that one, yeah.
Permitted for us to walk around?
Yes. Sure. Come right up there. Sure, come over there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the problems that I wanted to address is get a big video camera so that we can display the thing up here.
They have that network.
Yeah. Well, we could do it when the TV people are here.
Come on up here.
There he is. We can get a closed caption monitor.
That's what they do in Westport.
And just put it up there.
That's what they do.
But I guess that's because you edit it down and everything.
We could do it actually.
You could.
Yeah, you could. It would, you could stream it onto the screen.
Right?
I think so, yeah.
Or even like a rolling, or just on a TV on a cart, like out there for the audience.
Yeah, that would be really easy to do.
What?
Mr. Chairman, not to digress, but some evening, if you like, I'll take you down to Westport on any Thursday night you want to go. That's what they do. They use the public TVs and they have a screen in the back, so that everything that's
Right.
in front of the commission. But anyway,
Okay, so we'll take that up. That's,
You buying dinner, John?
you're not funding that one, okay.
So Mr. Eggers is going to briefly go over again, so we're all clear on the heated area and the contained area.
Okay. Yeah, so like I was pointing out, this orange is the existing easement. It goes all the way up to the street here. There's a stone wall up here on the street, and then there's the gateway, which is the opening in the stone wall, which has a chain running across it, which would be essentially this opening here, I believe, is the one with the chain. Actually, there's a chain right there. You got the stone wall, you got the easement, so you can definitely come off the end of the street here and onto the little wharf. But this upper portion is proposed to be the easement extinguished across the whole thing. The upper portion goes to the private property, and the lower portion goes to the town with the gift. And then, we use drawing 5 in the application and repeated here with the aerial graphic as well. This existing easement to be redeeded as private space, which would be this line to the proposed wall. And this existing easement to be redeeded as public space, which would be the water side. So this part would doesn't need the easement because it would be fully owned by the town under this donation. This part would revert back to the easement would be removed from the private property.
So the public would access the staircase how?
We would have to come in, this gateway would have to be open, the chain would have to be moved, put in post or something so you can't drive on. But essentially you'd have to come in through here or through here.
Okay, so through the wharf.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
And Mr. Carey's already indicated, I don't mean to speak for Mr. Harmon, but
that, I think he said tonight, the chain would be removed or adjusted so that that access would be unimpeded.
Well, it sounds like that would have to be done, almost like a condition of approval in a lot of ways.
okay, so I thank you for that, Chris. Just a few, yes, Mr. Noonan.
The gentleman from the Harbor Commission also had said, with that finger, why not, in one of his, at least his proposed suggestion off the top was, why is that finger coming jutting out? Why not cut it across?
Well, he referenced that, Mr. Harmon referenced that in terms of the ramp, and I want to comment on the ramp because there's some aspects of the ramp that you need to consider. One, you're going to get an opinion, I assume, from the town attorney in terms of the ADA issues. But the other thing I think you need to consider here is that a ramp that would be established is going to create an issue because you're going to be going then into the coastal jurisdiction, over the coastal jurisdiction line, as I would look at these plans. So I don't think DEEP would favor that at all. So I think the ramp is problematic, and
Well, it doesn't, so I appreciate that. I don't think that a ramp per se if it doesn't need to be ADA compliant, then the ramp wouldn't necessarily be the kind that's 3% grade. In other words, a ramp access could be a much more sort of steeper kind of...
we just got to stay out of the coastal jurisdiction line. The other thing is, I think Mr. Carey in the minutes of the...
And the purpose, of course, being for bringing a little roller or something, maybe even a wheelbarrow or something like that, down. So,
I think the stairs, as a matter of maintenance, Mr. Carey is on record in the minutes of the Harbor Management Commission that he did not feel that the maintenance of the stairs would be a big issue. And frankly, I think the other issue to consider, and you're totally right, if it's ADA required, then we're having no conversation. But if it's discretionary, I would think that the function and aesthetics are such that you're better served by the stairs.
But regardless of the
not
ramp...
if you have a baby carriage.
Yeah, but even if you I have 7 grandchildren. You could travel
it out.
with the baby carriage.
Yeah.
Regardless of the ramp or stairs, why that finger though? Is there grade issues or he's over there?
I'll let Mr. Eggers address that. The reference, are you clear on what they're referring to when they say the finger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially the proposed grading in here, this lawn, which is fairly flat, essentially gets matched to the proposed wall, and that was just the preferred layout, and then it brings the access to the down a little bit further onto the beach into a reasonable spot for, relative to where the existing stones are to put in the access.
Yeah, and I suppose the question is, does it need to be as big as it's proposed in order for the applicant to retain riparian rights? Because as present,
Turn right on the other side.
it goes, it cuts across the entire front, basically.
Because that whole part of where the new seawall, I guess, is going to be constructed, that's all going to be built up grade-wise so it's flat, correct?
Yeah, it'll be flat, and it follows the, toe of the, existing revetment. So that's the corner of the revetment. The toe of the revetment is, so as you can see, the last stone around the sand here. But we stay above the, toe of the revetment, so we maintain the existing revetment along the toe.
But it's going to be flat, I guess is my point. You're building that whole area up to be flat.
Yeah, so this grade essentially matches the lawn up here, grades back to match the lawn up here.
I don't think I really appreciated what was, I'm a little surprised DEP agreed to it, because of how much is going to come up. To be frank, it's not my...
3 or 4 feet, it looks
No, I
like.
think it's a very generous, allocation of what is now private property. And that's...
Well, that's absolutely the case. I would agree with that 100%. Okay, but the finger, quote unquote, is more of just a choice that was made on your end.
But it wasn't arbitrary.
Yeah.
No.
Because it basically was to follow, as you just described, the outline of the revetment area.
Well, I think it's interesting that the path that you spoke about earlier, the sort of natural path that people have been following for over a decade, I guess, to get onto this site, you'd think you'd want to put your retaining wall behind that, which would chop off that finger. It's, this is the path right here. That's what the public is familiar with using as the entry point. Now you'd give them a nice set of stairs that focuses their attention.
Hopefully the stairs will be the focus.
Okay.
Just a few other comments. I think, and I hope, it was a little disappointing that the Sasquatch Association, which we have a lot of respect for, took initially the position they took. I got some impression that as we went through this, there might be a better understanding of what it is we're proposing and why. But on a couple of those points, first of all, the maintenance of the stairs, Mr. Carey, who's the conservation director, is very comfortable with that. That's part of the minutes that you have from the Harbor Management Commission. He does not think that will impose a burden on the town. We've spoken about the stairs versus the ramps, so I'm not going to be redundant about that. The fortification that was referred to, that was a direct recommendation of the DEEP by Mr. Goucher, and I will defer to his knowledge in terms of such issues. But again, that was something that was a direct recommendation by DEEP. So I think, it's important that you know that. The comment that was made, and I'm not trying to quote out of context or gratuity, but they're going to use and walk over the beach anyway. Well, that's the whole essence of why we're here. They don't have the right to do that, and what some property owners would do who didn't have the sense of neighborliness and community that Mr. McMahon did, they would just do what they have to do to protect their property, thereby significantly inhibiting public access to the beach. Mr. McMahon has taken a different approach, a significantly different approach. As I said, it's significant time and expense to him, and we believe, as I said at the beginning, that it's a good solution for us, but it is a very good solution for the town. As far as Mr. Fatimi's comments, the litigation that was settled resulted in an agreement. One of the aspects of the agreement was an easement that's not functional or safe, and we're trying to address that. Other aspects of the agreement, and I think one of the speakers spoke to that, and I said earlier, will remain in effect here, so that the protections that were afforded by the agreement in terms of structures and things of that nature will not be discarded. But what will be changed is an easement over these
There's a few great pictures, you've got them all, but I mean, you've been out there, you'll be out there again, there's no way you can safely traverse that easement area.
To that end, what do we need to do to make arrangements in order to walk the property and have somebody show us the proposed lines and such?
Well, you can do anything, we just need to be careful about how you're going to do that in the context of these proceedings.
Well, we can go.
You can go,
We just need permission.
You have our permission.
That's my point.
Anytime.
Anytime, so does someone need to be there? I mean,
Mr. Wendt is well familiar with whatever, and
You don't even need to be on the private property.
but you're welcome to be if you want to be.
okay, very good.
Mr. McMahon is here, and if you organize a field trip or a series of field trips, which considering quorum issues and stuff, you may want to think
No, that's fine.
then Mr. Wendt can just let me know, and I'll let Mr. McMahon know, and
Yep,
he'll be aware.
that's what I wanted to.
Okay? So that's really the essence. The only thing we're changing with regard to that agreement is an improved access, public access, safe public access for the public. I didn't really understand the remark about changing the visuals or the vistas of Southport Harbor. I mean, we're not changing anything that. There's a fence that's already been approved by the HDC. We think what we're proposing here is a far less or somewhat less, prominent fence, which will fit well with the community. So I don't know what else I can say that I didn't say at the beginning. This is a win-win situation for the town. The issue of trespass has been a very serious one for Mr. McMahon. It has caused difficulties with regard to his insurance coverage. The approach that we're taking here is to try to address that in a way that's meaningful, and so that he can remain, a very contributing and proud member of the Village of Southport. He's doing that by making this significant gift. And at the end of the day, we arrive at a much better situation in terms of safe, meaningful public access, especially in conjunction with the town-owned property being the Long Wharf Park. So please answer any questions you would have. We'll certainly get you that deed for your work session.
Good.
And we hope you'll look favorably on this and also make a favorable recommendation under the 824 review to the Board of Selectmen so that we can consider finalizing this.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Fallon? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and
Close the
gentlemen.
public hearing, and I'll adjourn the meeting.